The Progressive Era, Section 3, with Ms. Loshy. Progressive reforms. Progressives wanted to reform the government. They worked to pass several amendments to the U.S. Constitution. Progressives adopted many reforms from the Populist Party. The 16th Amendment. The 16th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution created the gradual income tax. This created a revenue for the government. This amendment was supported by populists and progressives. So a revenue is money that's coming in, so it created money coming into the government. And a gradual income tax is when the poor are taxed less than the rich are on their income or the money that they're making yearly. The 17th Amendment. The 17th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution made it possible for senators to be elected directly by the people whom they represented. Women's suffrage. Women's suffrage is the right for women to vote. Women did not have suffrage or the right to vote. Women boycotted and protested in order to gain national attention on the issue. This became known as the women's suffrage movement. Susan B. Anthony. Susan B. Anthony was a reformer and a suffragette. A suffragette is a woman who worked for the right for women to vote. She was very involved in the suffrage movement. She helped to organize the National Woman Association, who worked towards women's suffrage. She was arrested in 1872 for trying to vote. Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton worked together for women's suffrage. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was another influential suffragette. She organized the first women's suffrage convention in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848. She co-founded the National Woman Suffrage Association. The 19th Amendment. The 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution granted women suffrage. Women now had the right to vote in federal elections. Some states had previously granted women suffrage on the state level. The 19th Amendment was passed in 1920. Muckrakers. Muckrakers were journalists who exposed corruption in business and in government. Big business had been virtually unregulated and took advantage of both their workers and their customers. Upton Sinclair in the Jungle. Upton Sinclair was a famous muckraker. He exposed the unsanitary conditions of the meatpacking industry in his book called The Jungle. Spoiled meat was being ground up and sold to customers. There was little to no sanitation either. President Theodore Roosevelt read the book, as well as many Americans. Americans were outraged. The Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act were passed as a result of the publishing of The Jungle. The Pure Food and Drug Act. The Pure Food and Drug Act made it illegal to sell goods that were spoiled, poisonous, and claimed to do something that they didn't. Unless a medicine company could prove that their product cured everything, they couldn't claim that it could. This was the first step that the government took to protect consumers. Muckrakers and women's organizations helped to pass this law. Consumers are people that are purchasing goods. The Food and Drug Administration. In order to enforce the Pure Food and Drug Act, the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, was created to enforce the law. Products consumed by consumers must pass FDA inspection before being sold to the public. The Meat Inspection Act. The Meat Inspection Act required meat packaging facilities to be inspected by federal agents. This helped to increase sanitation and the quality of meats being sold to customers.